It's time for Baseball's Last Frontier, stories from the Pecos League, the podcast that will open your door to baseball's entry level, telling you the stories of the teams, players, and coaches of an independent minor league circuit. I'm your host, Bruce McClure, and I have the pleasure of introducing to you my friend, partner, and co-host, and man on the inside, Evan Katz. Evan, first off, where are you? And second off, what is this rumor about you playing with sump pumps in a dugout somewhere?
Oh my goodness. Well, we're in a apartment dormitories at Mid-Plains Community College here in North Platte. Back is what we call home. In the summer, we have returned from a road trip to play a couple of games. It's been raining, and we're learning all about it. Bill Wood Field in North Platte was built in 1956, and the field requires some work because it's used by us and another team, and we do the work on it with some help from the American Legion teams. But the drainage system is always a mystery. And yesterday we get to the field and we're working on the field, and I go to the visitors' dugout and there's 4 inches of water in there. We have to bring a sump pump in. We clean it out. We figure it's going to dry out. I get back for game time, and my goodness, the thing has flooded again. And one of the longer time residents said to me, "Evan, you see that pond over there? That's the water level. This field was built on wet land, and when the water level rises in that pond, the dugout fills up, and the sump pump that's built into the dugout doesn't work. So you have to bring in a secondary sump pump." So
that's
I
fun.
just learned about the antiquated drainage system here at Bill Wood Field with real dugouts below grade, which flood when it rains 2 inches overnight.
Oh, that sounds like a ton of fun.
Well, we're really somewhat discouraged with the amount of field work. We've had 10 inches of rain since we got here in May. And every time it rains, we have to spend several hours on the field. And it's a little discouraging when you want to use your available time for baseball. But this is also minor league baseball. And as we have said before, anything can happen in the Pecos League, and the players are prepared for it. They want the field to be ready for games, and they put the time that's needed in to get the field ready.
I remember my days in minor league ball when I was working in New Britain, Connecticut for the old New Britain Rockcats. We had a drainage system in our outfield that I guess I could put this rather gently. It just didn't work. And I vividly recall night after night after rainstorms early in the season where the guys who were taking care of the grounds at the time, because it was a municipal stadium, so it was, people that work for the town of New Britain, we're out there with squeegees trying to get the water out of there. And I remember a few times where couldn't do it, wound up having to cancel the game because wet grounds, couldn't play. Somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, we have a few squeegees in the shed that we have to pull out from time to time.
In the shed, out back, in the back 40 in the shed. How close is that pond to the ballpark?
Oh, foul territory, a small parking area, maybe 50 yards. It's pretty close. I mean, North Platte's pretty flat, and there's a couple of rivers that go through it, and I think it has to do with the geology and whatever is below the surface. I think it's a very porous type below the dirt level, so water moves around very, very easily.
Not nice. Not nice. That's no fun. I did all that stuff when I was a kid. It's not fun when you're in your 20s, let alone now.
So Bruce, you asked me where I was. You were on a trip recently too, weren't you?
Oh man, I was hoping you weren't going to bring this up. Yes, I was. I spent last week getting barely any sleep at the SABR National Convention in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. It's a period from Wednesday through Saturday, so it's 4 days of total baseball immersion. There are research presentations and player panels and awards and a laundry list of activity for baseball fans to travel to and enjoy and meet other fanatics like we are, and really get their fix on the research and things that are going on behind the scenes of baseball today. We, one presentation was a discussion of how many games did Satchel Paige really pitch. There's so many of them that were really undocumented that could be uncovered somehow, but could the numbers be pulled to light? And that was a very interesting talk where it's theorized that Page pitched probably 2,000 games in his career.
So Bruce,
Go ahead.
you got to tell me now. I have yet to go to a SABR convention, and I'm really looking forward to it. But what is it like to be surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of people that are as baseball crazy as you?
It can be frenetic at times because this convention was attended by a little over 500, and it was laid out very close this time, which was great because you didn't miss things that you wanted to get to. We set these things up to be a very social community building event. If you don't go away from a SABR convention having made a couple, 3, 4 new friends, you did it wrong. You did it wrong, because you're always going to find somebody who is interested in a portion of baseball that you are.
Well,
and then there's opportunities to meet people outside of that bubble. Go ahead.
And for those people that may not be familiar with SABR, what's so unique about it, I think, as an organization, is it's got all the different slices of baseball. If you're interested in baseball in the 19th century, if you're interested in minor league teams that don't exist anymore, if you're into all the new analytics and TrackMan and all the data that gets spit out for hitters and pitchers, you will find resources there and people that are as into those topics as you are. And that's what I think makes it sound like such a dynamic place to be.
One of my favorite lines, so to speak, when somebody asks me, what can I do in SABR? I ask them what they're interested in, and I can usually come up with a committee that studies that. And I was doing an event here in New Hampshire, in Nashua, New Hampshire, at a ball game there, and I asked that question of a fan, and his response was, "You know what? I'm interested in ballpark food." Cool. We've got a committee for that. We have a concessions committee. And the guy looked at me like I was from Mars. He says, "Wait a minute, you do it?" "Yeah, we got a concessions committee." He signed up. It's a lot of fun. It's 4 days of total immersion in baseball usually in a really great city in the country. We typically go to at least one game, which this year we went to 2. We went to a minor league game in Frisco and a major league game in Arlington to see the Texas Rangers. That ballpark is a technological marvel. Wow. But if you haven't gone to a convention, you don't have to be a SABR member to go, and we'd love to have you.
Okay, well, we will spread the word.
There you go. So, you've been traveling. What's going on with you? What's this about? You had to pinch hit as a PA announcer.
Right. Well, so, anything can happen in the Pecos League, and our PA announcer here at Bill Woodfield couldn't make it. The backup PA announcer couldn't make it. And of course, manager Todd Everleth looks down the roster and let's see who's comfortable in front of a microphone. Oh, Evan, maybe you can be the PA announcer tonight. So, of course, you want to help out the team. You want to get the word out. So I went up there and did the lineups and the national anthem. And, of course, one of the best things that you do is you get to pick the music playlist. And I included Shipping Up to Boston Town in the between innings music by the Dropkick Murphys. And I also reminded fans to bring foul balls back. Your kids get a cold treat to bring the foul balls back because our baseball supply is very, very limited.
All right, so now I'm thinking back. Okay, so here we go with baseball research. Now I'm thinking back to some of the research of how clubs were operated in the early 1900s, where owners would get upset at players for hitting a home run out of the park when they did because, well, then you lost the baseball. That's terrific. So you pinch hit as a PA announcer. What's this about? The clubhouse was padlocked,
Oh,
and
it was almost like doing uh, the opening scene for a science fiction apocalyptic movie. The facilities at Billwood Field are old and they have older doors, and I will confess that we lock them with padlocks. And one of the things we say, lock the shed, lock the clubhouse before you leave, and they take the padlock and snap it closed. And turns out someone locked the clubhouse. One of our pitchers, Pierce Salbago, was still inside and he
oh
couldn't get
Lord.
out. And he said, well, I'm just going to take advantage of this. He napped, he snacked with the food that he had. He had a cricket companion. He called friends and family on his phone and talked on his favorite social media websites. He could have called a teammate to come get him, but he said, I'm just going to relax in here. It's nice and cool. And then, of course, as game time approached, we had to be at the field at 4:30. He called his pitcher friend Ben Smith and put in his Wendy's order so that he would have food for him when they opened up the door at 4:30. So,
Oh Lord. So what? Does he have a new nickname like Padlock or something like that now?
no, it has no. His nickname is Salad Bagel. His name is Pierce Salbago, and when he's on the mound, somehow it gets transmuted into Salad Bagel. Let's go Salad Bagel. That's his nickname.
You know what? Padlock Salad Bagel. I like that.
Right.
I like
Right.
that. Wow. We should have him on. Hey, hey man, how did it feel to be locked up in a ballpark? I want to know.
But the
I
first
mean,
thing I thought of was the beginning of The Walking Dead or something like that,
right,
where he comes
right.
out of the
All I
padlock
want to know now is,
clubhouse.
and you're gonna have to find this out for me for next week. Did he name the cricket?
Right. Yeah, and I'll have to check on that.
Okay. So, tell me about Trinidad. What happened in
Yeah.
Trinidad?
Well, speaking
We
of napping, I'm an early
right.
riser after late games, and I really have to take a nap during the day. And we were in Trinidad. I was walking around downtown, and I said, oh, boy, I could really use a place to close my eyes, but it's hard to find a comfortable place to sit in the downtown. There's benches, and it's kind of rude to fall asleep in coffee shops. So I'm walking on one of the side streets in Trinidad, Colorado, an old mining town, and I find the Sister Blandina Gardens, sponsored by the Mount Carmel Wellness and Community Center. They had set up quiet, shaded areas, which is important out there in Trinidad. It's very good. The sunrise is very high in the sky. It gets very hot in the sun. And I found a great quiet spot. I napped for 10 minutes right there in the Sister Blandina Gardens. I felt refreshed. Then I went searching for my iced coffee to help me wake up, and I had successfully found a place to nap for the day, so I'd be fully refreshed for game time at the ballpark a little bit later.
My father called that resting his eyes.
Well, it works. I'm a certified napper.
There you go. I can't do that. I can't do that. I mean, so we go back to the SABR convention. I ran out of gas during the closing ceremonies about 8:30, quarter to 9. Ducked out, went back to my room, and I'm a dope because I'm an early riser like you, and scheduled my flight based on my arrival time in New Hampshire, which was noon. And consequently, if you arrive early, you're leaving early. So I left. You want to guess what time I left Dallas
Uh,
local?
6 a.m.
Not bad. 5.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I was up at 2 to get on the shuttle. Oh man,
Oh,
I'll
God.
tell you. I need a chaperone to make sure I plan these things right because it just doesn't work when I do it. Let's talk about your road trips this week. 3 in Garden City, right?
Sure. Well, we have a little bit to recap.
That's we do.
Since we last spoke, we wrapped up a 4-game series with Garden City. We lost 17-6 one game, another one very close, 6-5. Actually, our guests coming up, Joe Barrons and Sean Bennett, veterans, teamed up to hold Garden City in check in that game where we lost 6-5. That was the closest game. I think that after we won the first game of the series, we lost another one 8-3 and another one 17-6. But Joe Barrons really and Sean, they'll talk about how they work together. That was the highlight of that series. We played a couple in Trinidad. We had
Hmm.
a 12-7 win in one game. Um, we got out to an early lead, and a lot of times we kind of get a little um, we lose our edge in the middle innings, but we held on to go ahead 9-3. Ben Smith started that game, and we had a 5-0 lead after 2 innings. They cut it, and Smith, we try to get our pitches through the sixth inning, and he threw 34 pitches, including four 3-2 counts in the sixth inning to get through the sixth inning so we could keep our bullpen intact. Corey Stewart picked up the stave, and second baseman Jake Boucher, left fielder Caleb Copeland, center fielder Rico Riley, and Alex Kornblow at shortstop combined for 10 hits and 9 runs in that game. That was very satisfying to win that game. The next game in Trinidad, unfortunately, we had a solid start from Mike Nestor after he gave up 4 runs in the first inning, and Eddie Cafton held him scoreless for 3 more. But unfortunately, Trinidad came up in the ninth inning with 3 runs. We did have some hits from Aiden Diltz, who was on base 5 times, and Caleb Copeland again, but we were walked off in that game, and that brought our record to 12-12. A little discouraging to be ahead by 3 runs in the ninth, but uh, we just couldn't hold it.
That's baseball.
Back to Garden City, lost 2 games, 17-1 and 12-4 again. Discouraging. Garden City has still lost only 3 games.
Really?
We're 25 games into the season, and we're the ones that have beat them twice, so we know we can beat them. But they took us at home
Mhm.
a couple of times. We returned home here Sunday. I'm looking up at the scoreboard. A bunch of zeros are going up. I go, wait a minute. No runs in the first, no runs in the second, no runs in the third. I think it was the first game at that point in the season after over 20 games where nobody had scored in the first 3 innings. And it turns out, again, the battery of Joe Barrons and Sean Bennett kept the game tied after 7. A 2-run triple by shortstop Alex Kornblow, who then stole home in the front end of a first base, third base double steal, stretched the score to 10-4 to end our 4-game losing streak. We had some momentum going into last night, but our defense just couldn't make enough of the plays. We lost last night 9-8. We finished June 13 wins and 15 losses. Would have liked to see that flipped, but our bullpen at times hasn't come through. Our defense hasn't been as good as we hope. We're just not scoring enough runs. That's really the situation. When you've got good pitching is hard to find here. Good defense for 9 innings is hard to find, and you need to score runs, and we just don't score quite enough runs to offset those things. So we're 13-15, finishing the months of June, and we're going to be playing Blackwell 14 times in the next 24 games. We think we're in a good position to earn a playoff spot.
And so that's what you said, 14 of 24?
14 of the 24 games in July are against Blackwell.
How many at home?
Just 4. No, I'm sorry, 7. 7.
All right, so 7, so half and half. Okay, so all right.
And we can compete with them. You know, we beat them the night before last, and we could have beat them last night, losing 9-8 after fighting back, being down 9-3. So we think we're in a good position in our division to get a playoff spot.
Okay. Definitely keep watch on that. But let's talk about who you interviewed this week. Now, if I recall from earlier in our pod, you said you had interviewed a couple of Pecos League veterans, Joe Barrons and Sean Bennett. Tell me about those guys.
Well, one of the things that I'd hoped to do this season was to get a pitcher and catcher on together to try to talk about the relationships that they develop over the course of the season and during a game. And as time went on, as I realized that Joe and Sean had played together for a couple of times and they put together some really good work as battery mates in games, I said, this would be perfect. So I asked them both if they would share their common Michigan roots and playing together in Texas in 2023 or 2022, California in 2023. They were separated last year when Joe took the year off, but they reunited to join us in North Platte, and they're going to give a little bit of perspective from what it's like being the Pecos League for 3 or 4 years, and also shed some light on how pitchers and catchers work together to get the team through the game and get a win for their team.
All right, so we're going to take a break. We're going to go to that interview, and we will see everyone back in just a few moments.
Good morning. We're here in the Buffalo Room of the Sleep Inn in Garden City, Kansas, the morning after a loss to Garden City on a brief road trip. We just came back from Trinidad, and I'm here with a couple of Pecos League veterans. I've got to my left Joe Barrons. He's in his third year in the Pecos League, and Sean Bennett in his fourth year. Joe and Sean played together in 2022, 2023, and are again together this year in 2025 with North Platte. You know, one of the things about the Pecos League is you learn things. We're driving through Kansas, I'm all learning about grain elevators and wheat and alfalfa. And I also learned from Joe and Sean, both from Michigan, that people from Michigan are called Michiganders. Is that correct, gentlemen?
Yeah.
So, Sean, tell me the story about the UP and what the UPers call the downstaters.
Yeah, so the Upper Peninsula, we call the Upper Peninsula folks Upers, and then the Upers call us trolls because we live below the bridge. So yeah, that's where those nicknames come from.
Well, that's the thing about the Pecos League. You meet guys from all over the country and hear stories and all that. So, what I'd like to do is have Joe and Sean talk about their arriving together. They played in Weimar, Texas, in 2022. Joe, how did you and Sean end up in Weimar in 2022?
I played in a smaller league before that, and I had met a guy who said that he was going out to Texas, and he messaged me about playing because I'd done like an Empire League tryout, or I think it was an Empire League tryout anyways, and he messaged me about playing, and I had played with him in that league, and so he had me come out for the spring training, and that's when I first met Sean, was the summer of 2022.
So that was the spring training. That was like in Houston.
Yeah. Kind of like what we did.
And you're both from Michigan, but you didn't know each other. You from different colleges, Sean?
Yeah, so it's funny enough, we both knew the same guy from Michigan that got us down here, Jabari. It was just funny. We both knew him in different ways because he had played with him in the United Shore League, and I played with him just in it was called the Detroit Mexican League, and so that's how I knew him.
Now, where did you go to college, Sean?
Hillsdale College.
Okay, and when did you graduate?
2015.
Okay, that's okay. Now, we are here with a couple of Pecos League veterans. Every team needs a couple of veterans, older guys that have played baseball for a while, have been in the Pecos League, as we know anything can happen in the Pecos League, and Sean and Joe are resources for the younger players to let them know that there is going to be a life after the crazy day they just had. And where did you go to college, Joe?
I went to Alma College, in the middle of the mitten.
Okay, and will you confess to your graduation date?
Yes, I graduated in 2019.
Okay, so we have a couple of Pecos League veterans. So let's talk a little bit about Weimar. Now, I can't remember how many years that franchise existed, but how is it that a franchise ended up in Weimar, Texas on Route 10 west of Houston? Either of you guys know the story behind that?
I mean, our best guess was because there was this amazing field there, and it was about an hour and a half from Houston. So the idea was like, oh, we've got this nice, really nice field with a small town. We're going to be able to draw people from Houston too, and didn't really play out that way.
Well, we know that the commissioner of the league, Andrew Dunn, has experimented with franchises in many, many places. Some have worked out really well, others not so much. Joe, what was your estimate of the number of people per game that were there?
Gosh, probably like 25 would be a stretch, I'd say.
I think that's being generous.
And that was being a little generous.
So talk about that first year. I know we know that there's a lot of travel in the Pecos League. You guys, Sean, you were a catcher. Joe, you're a pitcher. You worked together in a number of games. Did you travel together in a car that year?
The first stretch of series we didn't, but after that, yeah, we did, because we ended up living in the same house after our spring training was done. I was in a hotel, and then he had his host dad, and I ended up living with him after our first away series.
Yeah, strangely enough, we started on, was it a 14 or 17-day road
It was
trip?
a 14-day straight road trip between Austin and Garden City, I think was what it was.
Yeah, and Alpine.
And Alpine.
So that was our first taste of pro ball. Was a 14-day road trip.
Now, did you guys know that was what was gonna be like, or did you find out when you got there?
It was a rude awakening.
It was a very rude awakening. The first stay in Austin was a very rude awakening.
So how did you adjust? I mean, your experience is mostly college ball or summer leagues, that sort of thing, and all of a sudden you're driving in your car for hundreds of miles for many, many hours. How did you guys adjust, and how did you support each other?
So for me, I was out of baseball for quite a few years. I was only able to come back and play once I was able to work remote. So it was a big adjustment for me, trying to get back into playing shape and trying to get playing every day, because catching every day was an absolute grind. That was way different than college.
Right, I mean, you played. I've looked back. You played over 40 games that year, so you were catching pretty much every day.
Yeah. We had a very small roster that first year, and so it was the big adjustment was trying to find a way to play when you knew you weren't at 100%. That was the big adjustment.
And Joe, you were starting pitcher. You were in the rotation, so you had a regular turn. How did you? It's different from college, where you've got buses and you're going back and forth, and all of a sudden you're on the road. How did you adjust to being a starting pitcher in the Pecos League?
I kind of treated it like every other start, because usually, like, it's a starting pitcher. I have my days where I don't have to do anything, or I have my days where it's usually just working out, and so I just kind of sat back and enjoyed. I'd never been as west as Texas, so I took the time, even on the traveling for our games when I wasn't pitching, just to kind of enjoy what was around me and kind of just take a look and kind of take it all in, that I was doing what I was doing. So,
any memories of seeing things for the first time, or being in a place for the first time that stick out looking back?
Houston at 5 o'clock traffic was enough to. I had driven through Detroit a few dozen times in rush hour traffic, but it doesn't hold a candle to Houston in 5 o'clock traffic.
No, that was a long season. I think Weimar didn't win too many games that year. Also, I do have to mention that I think you were teammates with Alex Westman at that time, who we know unfortunately passed away last winter. But Alex, he's the kind of player that always managed to have a smile on his face. Did he make things go a little better for you guys?
Yeah, Alex was such a great guy. Very different personality, but he found a way to obviously endear himself to a bunch of different guys. Obviously, you meet a bunch of different people, different backgrounds, and strangely enough, he was able to connect with everybody. He definitely made the game a lot more fun.
Yeah, he made, some of the losses weren't as bad, or weren't so bad, just because we were all kind of just at the end of it, we were all teammates and we were all kind of friends, so we just kind of we're like, hey, let's just go out and have fun and play. And then that's actually when we started winning, so when we started to stop stressing so much. And so when we all kind of meshed, and he was a big part of that for sure.
So you finished up in Weimar 2022. A lot of our podcasts are focusing on the Mountain Division here in the Central and U.S. and Desert Southwest, but you both ended up in Monterey in 2023. How did you end up in Monterey?
Well, so both me and Joe, we knew John Garza. So he'd coached in 2022 in Weimar, and then he got the job out in Monterey. So we both followed him out there. So that's kind of what led us out there. And not gonna lie, being next to Big Sur and Yosemite was a big draw for wanting to go out to Monterey.
So the Pecos League, a lot of the attention gets focused on the Mountain Division. There's most of the teams, and this is where it was founded. And the Pecos League did pick up for the Pacific Association a number of years ago. What was it like? What is the Pacific Division? Is it very different, or how different is the Pacific Division from the Mountain Division in the Pecos League?
I mean, the only difference is just the playoff setup. They take 4 teams, as opposed to the Mountain Division takes 2 teams from the 2 divisions. And then I'd say the travel was a little bit easier, honestly.
Yeah.
The travel was a lot easier. Our farthest trip that we took probably in Monterey was
Bakersfield or
was
Marysville?
8 hours to Bakersfield, I think, was about the farthest we'd went. And that kind of made it a little bit easier. Was just the traveling was a lot easier. And I know saying that about California doesn't make a lot of sense, but yeah, we didn't really have to worry about driving through any of the thick cities or anything else like that. So.
And how about the playing conditions?
Monterey, I think when we played, never got above 65 degrees on the game day in the middle of the summer because we were right on the bay, but we had turf field, so it always felt like 75. And then the hottest it ever got, I think, was Bakersfield, 105, or Marysville. Marysville was up there, but playing in Texas kind of helped us with that, but I honestly enjoyed it because it wasn't like overly hot. The weather wasn't crap, really. So I enjoyed it.
I guess like play wise, what I noticed was, hitters they still hit over there. Pitching, the pitching was similar, like in terms of the starting rotations, but it seemed like the back end bullpen just didn't have the same kind of like gas or juice that they have over here. That I guess that would be the biggest difference I noticed. But it was weird because of the way the series were lined up. You'd play like 1-game series because of how close people were. So pitching was a little different. Like there was a lot more off days because you started earlier in May. So like you played things a little bit differently. Like I swear we got away with like a 3 or 4 man starting rotation in Monterey.
I think we did. Yeah.
We only had 3 or 4 starting pitchers, and then we would piece together games when we had to.
I did
the bullpen.
I didn't even show up until the middle of June.
Yeah.
So that was your second year together. So you're teammates for a while. You begin to develop a relationship. Can you talk about the evolution of your relationship of pitcher and catcher? I mean, in the major leagues and at all levels, there's a relationship that needs to develop between a pitcher and catcher. A lot of times you hear the pitcher and catcher say, "Wait, I just know what he wanted to throw, or know what fingers he was going to put down." Can you guys talk about that being your second year together and working together as a battery, how that evolved?
Hey, Tom entered me if you want to go ahead.
So I wanted you to start. You put the fingers down. So do you get to know Joe after a while? Did you begin to understand in what situations, what pitches he wanted to throw, and how he looked to get ready, and if he needed a reminder to you, go out to the mound? How did it develop from your end as the catcher, catching Joe's pitches?
So this sounds like a cliche, but honestly, it was just about building a relationship with Joe and trust. Like the more we got to know each other, and the more we hung out off the field, that honestly helped a lot with the on the field relationship. Because just like not only knowing what he wanted to throw, but knowing how to motivate him, knowing what needed to be said in the moment. Because like he's a competitor, he doesn't really need to be fired up most of the time. Sometimes it just needs to be focused in the right direction, really. Because like I said, he doesn't need help getting ready to go. It's just channeling it in the right direction sometimes.
What do you think of that, Joe? Is that a good assessment?
That's a pretty good assessment. I can be a little difficult sometimes. I know that I can, but even for me, like just like kind of go off of what Sean said, like even just hanging out and being friends. Like even back home when we kind of figured out, we hung out after we got back from Weimar, and he had texted me about playing in Monterey, and I was like, ooh, I want to go see California. So, and knowing that he's there, there's a lot of times where like I probably wouldn't have played Monterey just off of it if he wasn't there, just because like we're both from Michigan, and we're both like kind of the two sides of the same coin, just different lifestyles. But him and I get along so well, and he knows when to push my buttons when I need him to be pushed in a certain direction, and I think of Greg Maddox always had Eddie Perez. Like and I mean that no disrespect to any other of the catchers that we have, but I mean Sean's got me. Sean knows what pitch I'm going to throw before I even know I'm going to throw it. And there's sometimes, like even in the last start, I had the pitch gripped in my glove and he called it. So even just like him knowing the situations of which, like, what pitch to call from there, like he knows where I'm trying to go, especially off of what the last pitch was, because I'm always thinking in the game. I don't really go with a plan. I kind of see what the hitters do in a sense, and so he's watching that too, and that's how we can bounce off of one another. He'll notice some stuff that I don't, but then if I notice something, he'll call the pitch, and then sometimes he'll go through all my signs and I'll shake him off and he'll look at me like this, like tilt his head, like, what are we doing here? Like, but then like once we figure it out, I'll talk to him afterwards and I'll be like, hey, this is what I saw, so that I was trying to attack this weakness. And he was like, oh, he's like, all right, cool. Like, but it's always funny, him and I always laugh about it because he'll like tilt his head at me, looking at me, trying to figure out, all right, what are you thinking here? Like,
so you evolve as a pitcher, Sean. I'm sure you're not the same catcher you were a couple of years ago. Have there been being together for a second year, did you see each other evolve as becoming a better catcher, becoming a better pitcher, how you are responding to situations? Did you notice growth in each other as battery mates?
Yeah, definitely. So we're able to do bullpens in the off season together. So like we did a lot of work where Joe's picked up some velocity and some movement over the years. So he's definitely not the same pitcher in Weimer. When I first met him, it was a lot more sinkers. Now it's a lot of cutters. Like there's been a huge development in the way he pitches. It's really cool to see. Like I said, working in the off season, there's just like certain things. Like I know very little about pitching mechanics, despite catching all my life. But like catching him enough, I know when he's missing a certain way. It's like all you got to do is give him a reminder with the target of where he needs to be. But yeah, that off season work, it's fun to see the development in him.
So you are geographically close enough to
hour and a half from each other, I think.
Yeah, we just meet up at high school bullpens or wherever we can find a mound to throw off of.
So we're going to go to 2024. Sean, you started the season in Santa Fe, and then ended up in North Platte. And Joe, you again took the year off. So Sean, just give us a little bit of an update how you ended up in Santa Fe and North Platte in 2024, your third year. You're catching over 40 games a year, so you were obviously an experienced catcher. How did you end up in Santa Fe and move to North Platte last year?
Well, I again followed Coach Garza out to Santa Fe last year. Things went well for a few weeks, but just differences of opinions and other things led to me going to North Platte and getting an opportunity with Coach Everlath. So, but it was actually, strangely enough, one of I think my best offensive season that I've had in the league so far.
Right. So North Platte last year was an expansion team, and I think when you got there, it was still in its primary stages. The first part of the season was real learning experience for Todd and sorting through players, and you got there, and I think that it was a fairly successful July. Ended up on a positive note. So, Joe, what were you doing last summer anyway? Can I ask?
I was trying to start a life. As stupid as that sounds. No, I had all the years that I've been playing baseball, I'd had a girlfriend back home, and I was engaged and whatnot. So that kind of it played a part into it. But then life situations being what they are.
Right.
And I had an opportunity to probably go play in a different league in Canada, and I just didn't take the call. And I knew that my body needed a rest for a little bit too. And
well, it's good to emphasize that when players are in college, life is fairly simple, and you're really beginning to get just introduced to the adult world. You guys are a little bit older, so you've got to make more difficult choices. Did you mention, Sean, that you were actually working remotely your first year?
Yeah, so this is the first year I haven't been working, right. But yeah, every year I've worked remotely while playing.
So, and that's part of it. If you're being old, you're being a little bit older. You've got income requirements. You're developing relationships. I know some players have family members that are ill, and the responsibilities begin to accumulate, and you've got to figure a way out how to juggle it. It's a lot simpler if you just finished college or a year out of college and you're working off savings, or your parents are supporting you. You guys are a little bit older, so you've got more responsibilities to juggle. So now we're going to bring us to the current date in 2025, and I'm here as a bullpen coach. It's really been great to watch you guys work together, and I want to just ask about a specific game. A couple games ago, I think it was at the game in Santa Fe, Joe, where you threw 60 pitches in 6 innings.
Trinidad. 53 in 6 innings.
And it was an average of 2 pitches a batter. And that's almost unheard of in the Pecos League. And I just wanted to ask you, Joe and Sean, how is it that happens? I mean, you're not a big strikeout pitcher. And what's your approach that allows you to be effective for 6 innings, only give up 1 run in 6 innings when teams are scoring on average a run an inning? How do you pull together your years of experience in Trinidad, which is a small ballpark? How do you come up with an outing like that in the 2025 season?
I think mainly what we did was we went off of what the first 2 innings were like, and we noticed that they were swinging a lot at the first pitch. Like there was not a lot of them letting me get to 2 strikes to set stuff up. They were swinging at the setup stuff, and I know that when I noticed that, it's like, okay, now I make an adjustment plan to not try to set pitches up, but make the first strike pitch as effective as like a strike 3 pitch just to see. And a majority of the time it worked. I mean, 6,500 feet of elevation, the ball's going to get out of the yard occasionally. But, I mean, that's just kind of how I noticed it, and I said something to him about it. I was like, hey, they're swinging a lot more at the second strike, and I need to be better on the second strike. So then our second strike pitch was almost like our strike 3 pitch. Mm-hmm. We make a real effective strike 2 pitch, they'd swing at it and ground it out or whatever, and then we flipped it and pitched backwards. Mm-hmm. And I even feel like, when you see teams enough, they're going to know what you're going to be like, and if people know that you're going to be around the plate, they're going to start swinging at the first couple pitches anyway. So then, but it makes my life easier because then I make a quick adjustment and start pitching backwards, and then such is history.
Behind the plate in a game like that, how much are you talking in between innings? Like you say, you mentioned the first couple of innings. How do you communicate to keep that rhythm going, Sean?
I think there's a lot of communication early on, like just trying to, basically me communicating what the strike zone is and what I'm getting from the umpire, what I'm seeing from him. But honestly, I swear once we hit the 3rd inning, it was just on cruise control. Mm-hmm. I'd honestly just give him a high five in between innings, tell him good job, and that was about it. Because it felt like we found our groove. But first 2 innings, I thought it was a pretty long conversation. It's not bad ones, but just like this is what I'm seeing, this is what he's seeing. And then once we were on the same page, it was going after them because they were a bunch of young, aggressive hitters. So we had a pretty good game plan.
So let's want to ask a little bit about the ballparks in the Pecos League. We've got Trinidad at elevation 6,500 feet. We've got Santa Fe with 250 feet down the right field line. Ballparks of all different sizes and shapes and weather. How much do you actually think about the elevation, the size of the ballparks when you guys are preparing for the game or out there on the mound?
I mean, I do a little bit, not so much, but there again, I don't strike a lot of guys out, but I've pitched to contact, and when you give up a little fluke fly ball home run that in 70 other ballparks it's never going to get out. It's an adjustment thing because there's some stuff that you can make a really good pitch and have a guy on his front foot and then the ball still leave the yard because it's 6,500 feet elevation. So it's frustrating for sure. I mean, especially when you are a halfway decent pitcher and make good pitches, you can still give up home runs. I mean, and you can even do that in regular ballparks too. But it just makes it that much more frustrating where you see a guy completely out on his front foot, but yet he just flicks the hands at it, gets the barrel on it, hits it up in the air, the wind's blowing out 6,500 feet elevation, it's going to go like, and it's just a frustrating part of it.
So, but in terms of your own game planning, is you know that's a factor. But do you think about some places the wind is blowing in really hard? I mean, do you really think about it that much, or do you just go out there and just try to pitch to your game plan?
I mean, I think in a sense, yeah, because if the wind's blowing in, I know I can make mistakes. Like I know that I don't have to be as perfect, but when the wind's blowing out, I do try to be like, all right, I got to keep the ball low today, or I got to keep the ball not in the air, and if I miss barrels, like, but if the wind's blowing in, then I know I can make a couple of mistakes, and there's only a few guys in this league that I know that can hit the ball out with 20-mile-an-hour winds blowing in, so that's what I think about.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, with certain ballparks, you just avoid certain sides of the plate. Right? Santa Fe, like, you miss over the plate, and you're just, it can just be an easy pop-out that, finds its way out, so sometimes you're just pitching based on the size of the park and where it's going, you're trying to avoid certain sides of the plate because mistakes turn into, easy home runs.
So in our last couple of minutes here, Sean, I just want to ask you, I notice you've been a catcher primarily. You've also been playing third base, I think, which is a fairly new position. I think last night you were at first base. What do you have to do to prepare for a game if you're catching versus first base versus third base? Does that make life more difficult for you, or does it make it more interesting, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, I do like the variety, but in terms of like preparation, I do a lot more when I'm catching than I do when I'm playing third or first, but I also find that when I'm catching, it helps me kind of lock into the game a little bit more because that's, where I'm used to being. It gives me kind of that sense of purpose on both sides of the field, whereas third base and first base, unfortunately, you're sometimes stuck with your thoughts a lot because there's not a lot going on the defensive side sometimes. Whereas catching, it's like you don't have time to think about your at-bats. You're locked in every pitch, trying to steal pitches for your pitcher, trying to manage the game and what. So I guess that would be the big difference, but I do enjoy playing, and getting out from behind the plate every once in a while, saving the knees.
So, Joe, I'm going to conclude here. I'm out in the bullpen. The fields are all different shapes and sizes here, and I've given you the nickname "the man of 10,000 steps" because every time I see you, you're walking around back and forth. How does that help you during the game when you're walking back and forth between the dugout and the bullpen and wherever else you're going?
Most of the time, like Sean says, I'm kind of alone with my thoughts on days that I'm not pitching. So it's like I sit and I watch the game and I study like the managerial decisions being made. And so like that's kind of what I do. And my pacing is more of just like I'm thinking about stuff and like, I'm thinking about the game, what I would do in that situation of like if I were the manager, like just thinking game strategies the entire time. But it helps me not get complacent so that way I can just I can relax some days, but most days I get up and walk, and it's more to not get bored and more to just kind of stay loose, just in case. I know I'm a starter, but you never know. Like, and I'm, Sean said earlier, I'm competitive, so that's my competitiveness where I'd rather be in the ball game as opposed to, even if I just threw the day before, I'd rather be in the ball game than sitting on the bench, and I'd like to do something to help. So it's more of just a pacing thing of like I got to calm myself down a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of just only what I do is I just pace and I sit and I think and then talk about it and get it out. But yeah, I pace when I talk on the phone. So, so I've always been kind of like that where I can't really sit still when the game's going on. I sit and think and study and go from there.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, Joe Barrons, pitcher for the North Platte 80s, Sean, catcher and sometime first baseman, third baseman for the North Platte 80s. Thank you for taking time out of your morning. You got to prepare for another game tonight, and hopefully we'll get in the win column tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we're back. You're listening to Baseball's Last Frontier, stories from the Pecos League. I'm Bruce McClure, and I'm here with Evan Katz, North Platte 80s bullpen coach. Good stuff with those two guys. Real good stuff.
It was great talking to them because, I'm not even sure we get to ask questions that they hadn't thought of or they haven't answered together before. And I think it's good for listeners to hear how the pitchers and catchers work together. And Joe and Sean, I think they've thrown to each other about 20 times. And so they really got to know each other. And then that personal relationship that they have where they meet each other halfway in the off season, that's the kind of baseball friendship that really, really endures. And I think that also helps them get through the rough spots when they've got that friendship and that relationship to draw on. I think that really makes a difference when they're out there during a competitive game and figuring out how they can work together to overcome the opposition.
That's what I point to at times when I talk about the baseball community, because there are so many independent minor leagues out there that foster such friendships that we see the guy, the guys that play for the Yankees, the guys that played for the Red Sox, whatever it might be. They're their own little community, and they're out in front in the world, and everybody sees that. But as you move down the ladder to this level of baseball, those relationships are so important because it's not as easy a grind. It's really a lot difficult, a lot more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, what's going on this week in the Pecos League, man?
Okay, so we get 2 days off today. Actually, tonight
Ooh.
we're going to the local spot called Axes and Aces. This is one of those newer type facilities where if you want to do some axe throwing in between sips of your drink, they've got targets set up and there's games, but we're going to be up there with Axes and Aces with a player meet and greet and music to connect with the community, make people aware of the 80s. We've got how many more home games do we have? 10 more home games in July. So we have sponsors lined up for, I think, almost all of them. So
good.
We're going to connect with the community. Then we go to Trinidad for 3 games over the 4th of July, including post-game fireworks. I will definitely check out the nap zone at the Sister Blandina Gardens again. Downtown. We go to Blackwell. One of the interesting things about Blackwell, the dimensions of the park, 310 down the line, left and right, and 340 to center field. So look for some high scoring games there. And also, baseball historians might note that Ernie Banks played in Blackwell, Oklahoma. Yep. So we will look for, I think this is a plaque or some kind of recognition of his time there when we're there.
You picked up Vance Serrano from Fisher, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, Vance came in last night. This is one of the, I think I may have mentioned this earlier. We recruited Vance. We tried to see if he could finish up his master's degree in math remotely and pitch for us in June. They told him, no, you've got to be in person. So he wrapped up his college season, shot home to Las Vegas to get rid of most of his stuff. And he joined us last night, and we were looking forward to having Vance because you can never have too much pitching. So we're hoping Vance is going to be able to help us out during the month of July.
So this week you've got the Triangle Road Trip.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah.
I was realizing, of course, this is what I call our almost equilateral triangle road trip. So you got to do a mental picture. We're going to travel 400 miles southwest of Trinidad, 450 miles east to Blackwell, Oklahoma, and then 450 miles northwest back to North Platte. And we will probably be about 80% done with our travel after that. We'll only have one long road trip, but we'll probably have done over 5,000 miles or over 4,000 miles of our nearly 6,000 miles at the end of that. And so we're looking forward to being back from that trip. 400 miles in a day is a lot. 200 to 300 is doable, but 400, it's really getting up there.
I sure hope Todd did not lease his truck and he owns it and doesn't have to worry about the mileage.
He's got the best road trip truck and he's got the best presets. I think I told you on the radio.
You were talking about that.
So we were in good shape. And then, of course, we always talk baseball.
Nice. Well, if you want to talk about baseball and you want to talk about the Pecos League, for more information on it, you can check out their website at pecosleague.com. You can catch all the action in 2025 at pecosleague.tv as well. And finally, if you're a hardcore baseball fan, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community. Offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom, SABR boasts more than 35 different research committees, over 80 regional chapters, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world. For more information, go to saber.org today. Evan, any last licks?
Oh, yes. I have a really hopeful one. There is hope for the healthcare system. Last night, I think I scratched my eye before I was going to bed.
Huh?
I said, I've got to get this looked at. I was taking my contacts out. Something happened. And I said, I think I'm going to have to go to the emergency room. I go to Great Plains Health, the hospital nearby, the emergency room. And this is a true story. There is hope for the healthcare system. I was checked into the emergency room, seen, got my eye examined. I got antibiotic drops in less than an hour at 11:30 at night. Incredible care here by Great Plains Health. And I'm going to have to not wear my contacts for a day. I did have a slight scratch. And I'm at the gym this morning. It's like 8:30 in the morning, and I got a follow-up phone call. A follow-up
Oh, wow.
phone call from my midnight visit. So I just want to do a big shout out to Great Plains Health and let people know the healthcare system can work.
This is yet another recruiting tool you can use for players next year in the
Oh,
Pecos League.
oh, Bruce. Oh, what a fantastic idea. It's going right on the list.
There you go. There you go. All right, let's get everybody out of here. For Evan Katz, I am Bruce McClure. We'll see you next week.
So long, Bruce.